Great to have you with us. I recognize many of your names that are filtering through in the chat as regular attendees. So great to have you with us. If you're new to Next Practices Weekly, we are I4CP, the Institute for Corporate Productivity. We're a human capital research firm that discovers the people practices that drive high performance in this crazy and ever-changing world. We'd like to help you see what's coming around the curve in terms of your HR and human capital practices. We do this primarily through our major research studies, which we do 6 to 8 every year. We look at organizations according to their revenue growth, profitability, market share, and customer satisfaction. That's how we define high performance. And we like to tease out what that top quartile, that top 25% are truly doing differently in HR than their lower performing counterparts. We're a member-based organization. If you're with one of our many member companies, maybe your logo is shown here on the screen. Maybe it's not. This is just a small sampling. But if you're with one of those organizations and with us today, special welcome to you. If you're not with a member company but would like to learn more about what that entails, just reach out to anyone at I4CP or visit us online at our website, i4cp.com, and we'd be happy to get you that information. As you can see, membership is quite broad. We've got very large organizations like Amazon, Microsoft, Visa, Accenture, and others. Also include a lot of sort of local or regional healthcare and finance, banks, all market verticals really included. My name's Tom Stone. I'm a senior research analyst here at I4CP, and most weeks I have the pleasure of co-hosting this event. Amber Burton is also a frequent host of Next Practices Weekly, and she joins me today, also a senior research analyst at I4CP. Good morning, Amber.
Morning, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you with us, and you are going to be bringing on our special guest in just a few minutes. But before then, I've got a few more quick announcements. This is Next Practices Weekly, and so as you can see, the next several Thursdays, same time, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific start time. We've got Pete Manias, who is formerly of Microsoft in their Total Rewards function area, and he's now the head of our Total Rewards leaderboard at I4CP. So he's going to be joining us to talk all things Total Rewards on May 29th. Then coming up June 5th, Amber will be with us, along with two of our other colleagues, Mark Walker and Mimi Turner, to talk about strategic HR leadership in these certainly very uncertain times. And then we'll have Samantha Dubridge, Vice President of HR with HPE, one of our great member organizations, joining us on June 12th. A couple of other things in terms of some resources that I'd like to draw your attention to. We pulled together 13 resources to help HR leaders lead in 2025, particularly navigating market uncertainty, whether it's around tariffs, inflation, whatever it might be. You see some of the things included here, some of the resources that you have access to. Just scan the QR code there in the bottom left or use the link in the chat, and you'll have access to these resources. Also want to note, because we're going to be talking a bit about AI from some particular angles today. Two quick things on AI. One, for I4CP members, and this is a member-only tool, we had been beta testing for some time our own AI platform, our own large language model that's been trained up on all I4CP content. And we've now launched it, and we're announcing it. It's named AHRI. AHRI, you get it there with the colors, HR embedded in AI. It's our AI HR assistant tool that we've come out with for members at I4CP. So we still, of course, have the site-wide search that's similar to doing a Google search within our site. But the AHRI tool is far more powerful. If you're used to ChatGPT or Gemini, you know what I'm talking about. You can ask it questions, ask it follow-ups, reprompt, and really dig into what you're looking for. So again, for members on the call, just scan the QR code there or use the link in the chat, and you can start using AHRI anytime. And then lastly, wanted to once again mention our workforce readiness in the era of AI study. The full report is available to I4CP members. The executive brief, though, is available to all. So again, QR code on the screen, link over in the chat. I had the pleasure of presenting on this study this past week in Washington, D.C. I was a speaker at the ATD, that's the Association for Talent Development, their main conference each year. The location always changes. This year it was in Washington, D.C. And I had a room of 100 or 150 folks, and I walked through some of the key findings from this study. It really is quite robust. So if you haven't seen any of our webinars on this, or at least downloaded the brief, I'd encourage you to do that. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Amber to introduce today's very special guest. Take it away, Amber.
Sure thing. Thank you, Tom. And I am, just like you said, I'm so excited to introduce today's guest, Van Jones. As many people here know, Van Jones is a U.S. media personality, entrepreneur, and world-class change maker. And Jones has a rare track record of bringing people together to do the hard things in areas as diverse as clean energy solutions, criminal justice reform, and racial inclusion in the tech sector. And in 2007, Van was the primary champion of the Green Jobs Act, which was signed into law by George W. Bush. And in 2009, he worked in the Obama White House as the special advisor for green jobs. In 2018, he helped pass the First Step Act, signed into law by Donald Trump. And the New York Times calls that legislation the most substantial breakthrough in criminal justice in a generation. In 2021, Jones was the first recipient of Jeff Bezos' Courage and Civility Award, and he has since founded Dream Machine Innovation Lab and launched Rapport.co, which uses AI to increase firms' EQ. He's a law school graduate, a Yale Law School graduate. Van is a CNN host, an Emmy Award-winning producer, 3 times New York Times bestselling author, and the creator of the Van Jones Substack. Van, you certainly stay busy. Thank you for joining us today.
That was good for my self-esteem. I
We aim to please at I4CP.
should have recorded that for when I'm feeling depressed. So thank you very much, Amy.
Well, with all of that being said, I think the only place for us to start here is for you to just talk about that multifaceted career. So, how would you describe such a multifaceted career and just share a couple of key learnings you've had along the way?
Well, look, I've been very blessed. I was born in 1968. That's the year that they, killed Dr. King. They killed Bobby Kennedy. They were just trying to kill hope in America the year I was born. And I just somehow, when I learned about that in kindergarten, I just kind of decided I wanted to do something to bring hope back. And, I've been very blessed. Grew up on the edge of a small town in rural West Tennessee. Obviously, given the year I was born, racism was an issue. Poverty for my family was an issue. But I learned that you can find good people anywhere. And if you assume because of where somebody comes from, or what color they are, or what church they go to, or whatever, you know something about them, you're usually going to be wrong. And I found that I think the biggest thing I've learned is that the more different someone is from me, the more their background is dissimilar from mine, the more I need them and the more they need me for us to be able to solve tough problems. It is so easy to just clump up with people who look like you, pray like you, vote like you, came from where you came from, and think you're solving problems. You'd be creating more problems than you solving. And if you just had one person who had a different point of view and you respected them and you trusted them, you listened to them, you could avoid so many missteps and misfortunes. And so I have tried to build a career based on reaching across lines of difference. And I've been increasingly shocked and disappointed that technology, which should be taking us, to the moon, is actually dividing us, distracting us, making it harder for people to come together. People wind up going down these algorithmic rabbit holes. What you see on your phone when you're coming into work is totally different than your coworkers. You're being fed one piece of information based on what you've liked and shared and followed in the past. They're seeing something totally different. By the time you get to work, you're in completely different universes, and yet you're supposed to somehow get along. And I said, well, we're going to wind up with the world, if we're not careful, where we're going to have an awful lot of data and very little wisdom. An awful lot of data and very little wisdom. And I wanted to figure out some way to take what I've learned about just people, how to listen, how to care about people. Can you translate that to technology? Is there a way to use AI not to just increase people's IQ, make everybody smarter, but can you actually use it to increase people's EQ, their emotional intelligence, make everybody better? Now, that is the mission that I've been on in politics. And I wanted to figure out if there's some way I could translate that over into technology. And so that's why we started Rapport.co.
Absolutely. And that bridge makes a lot of sense. And I love you already hitting on bringing together people to solve hard problems, because I think that's what we're going to start talking about today. Is there are some real challenges to solve in the workplace, and you're doing it, but that through line makes a lot of sense. I do want to pause and remind people this is a conversation. So I'm going to be keeping my eye on the chat, and Tom Stone will be doing the same. And so please, as we continue to talk today, drop your questions in the chat. We will get to them as soon as we can. But Van, let's jump into talking about rapport. So it was described in your bio that you are involved in several current ventures, and one of which is as co-founder of Rapport. And this is a tech platform that gives organizations continuous insight into workforce culture and morale. So my question to you is, what led you to launch this company and platform, and why now?
Well, I am an employer, and I've had different for-profit and not-for-profit entities, that I've been in charge of for a long time, and it's hard. And what I'm seeing is it's getting harder. Uh, People are starting to come back to work, but after COVID, a lot of people were literally supervising people that they had never seen in life. They had never breathed the same air. They had never smelled one pheromone from this other person. They're talking to somebody who's on Zoom. They don't know if this person has on pants. They don't know a single thing about this person. And yet somehow they're supposed to, have that same standard that we had back in the old days when at least you could see people, at the water fountain or in the parking lot. And I saw people were performing less well. People were quitting. People were quiet quitting. There's a lot of stuff that was going on. And I realized the only tool that people really had, to understand what was going on in the workplace were these surveys, which we can talk about later. But, quietly, and we're all friends here, some of these, too often surveys suck in terms of it takes too long to get any information back. You don't know what they're being used for. People just, turn them in. And so really coming out of COVID, coming out of that whole period, I started trying to figure out, is there some way that we could uh, bring people back together using technology? And so what Rapport.co is very simple. I thought to myself, I had some health problems, by the way. We all friends here, so we just gonna be real personal. I had some health problems, and I realized that a lot of changed in medicine. It used to be you would go once a year to get an annual exam, annual physical. But now you can have a Fitbit like I have, or a smartwatch, and you can get day to day to day to day information. Now, at the end of the year, the person who has the annual exam, health exam with their doctor is going to have some information, but that person who is getting that feedback every single day for 365, that person is going to be way smarter, way healthier, way ahead. So I'm like, okay, well, how can I apply this in the workplace? Because these surveys, these annual surveys, it's just like an annual thing. Now, you get the survey results, everybody mad, nobody happy. But this has been going on for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, maybe it's the last survey. And what are you supposed to do about it? You have no help. And also, people fill out the survey and saw no response. So now you have less trust. So, what are we doing with these surveys? And so I said, what if you could have a daily micro pulse, a 15 or 30-second pulse that would give you real insight and real information? So we went to the Difficult Conversations Lab at Columbia to get real data, research, evidence basis for our approach. And what it is, it's first of all, it's not an app you got to go get on because nobody's going to do that. It's built into the flow of work. And once a day or a couple times a week, you'll just get a little pulse, and it's emoji based. What is your energy level? One emoji is super energetic. The other emoji is toe up tired and three in the middle. So you just click really quickly my energy level. What's your workload? One emoji has the desk overflowing. The other emoji, the person's happy with, with reasonable work. Click real quick. And then basically any blockers, anything you want to share. My grandma just turned 100. My cat just died. Whatever it is, click. 15 to 30 seconds. You put that in there. Everybody in your team puts it in there. Within a week, you have an unbelievable map now, how everybody's doing. The manager has the ability now to track trends. And every Wednesday, people are upset. Or every, once we release that report, morale went through the roof up. Actual data that then lets you manage people's experience of the company. And so we went and we got Reid Hoffman of LinkedIn fame to invest. Oprah's fund invested. We said, look, we really want to do something here. And so we were able to build this thing. And it's amazing the feedback that we're getting. People are really shocked. Like, how was I managing these people without having literally no information, like zero information, all this time? And it's just like, again, people, if anybody's got a Fitbit or a smartwatch, you realize I didn't know how many steps I was getting. I don't know I had no idea how many hours I was sleeping. I didn't know this. I didn't know that. And so, or an Aura ring, also have one of those. So we're just trying to take that AI, which was used for individual health, and use it for company health. Say one more thing, and just give you all my crazy ideas. I also started thinking about, because I'm divorced, started thinking about these dating apps, which I'm not on because I'm too well known and I don't want to get in trouble, but I know they're there. You think about dating apps or CRM, how much compute do we use to understand people that we don't know? Right? A dating app, you're massive amounts of AI trying to help you understand somebody you've never met. And yet they're people that you're talking to every day. You don't have that kind of help. What if you had the same AI power that's helping you try to date somebody you've never met, may never see again, to help you deal with people you deal with every day? So these are the types of inspirations that we brought to this team. Hired people who had done, AI work in other contexts, trying to leverage empathy in like the call center environment, and built something we're pretty proud of. And and what I think is most important is technology should be used for good. It should be used to bring people together. It should be used to help people be more human, not less human. And until we have some companies like Rapport.co and others that are passionate about that, I think technology is going to keep causing more problems than it solves.
Oh, you hit on a lot of good things there. One being that now people know that they will not be looking for you on the dating apps. But more importantly, that technology can be used for good. I mean, I'm thinking myself about how much I depend on my own fitness apps and putting in a frown face after a really bad run. That stuff matters and it adds up and you see that progression. There's a
Yeah.
lot to be found there.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit. I'm so curious because I can only imagine the treasure trove of findings that you're getting. What were some early insights as you all started testing rapport that you were like, see, this is why we're doing this? What is
Okay.
something? Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know why I'm feeling so free today, but I'm just going to tell on myself some more. So we actually use it internally to rapport. And we had a guy who really messed up. We have a small team and high stakes, and you really can't afford a lot of mistakes. Most of you have been in startup environments, or at least know about them. We had a guy that really stepped on a rake, caused a bunch of problems for us, and we just got to fire the guy. Which you hate to do, but sometimes you got to do it. And our CEO was about to, was going to make the call happen, but the guy, checked in. He just said, in the narrative part, he just said, "I feel like nothing in my life is working."
Wow.
Now, if that's not information we would have had access to necessarily. You can have these Zoom meetings where everybody goes and does a check-in, but it's so obnoxious. Eventually, people, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, because you can't take up the whole meeting. So it's really hard to get that kind of information. But he said, "I feel like nothing in my life is working." And so our CEO, Tajio, started the meeting asking him about that. Well, it turned out there was a whole series of problems that was happening in this guy's life. And it just so happened that the kinds of problems this guy was having, Tajio, our CEO, knew a lot about and knew how to solve. And literally, rather than firing the guy, helped them solve his problems. Now this guy is one of our best people, period. Now I think how many people have lost their job just because they didn't know how to share or didn't know if it was welcome to share, or maybe they shared, but it went in deaf ears. This is the type of stuff that we need to correct for. And so we saw it with ourselves, but then we started running into problems. Turns out that if somebody says, hey, something like that, my life is falling apart, and nobody replies,
Mhm.
their actual trust goes down. So now your app is actually driving trust down. So we developed the AI we made it a little bit smarter. So if something like that happens, it actually gives a nudge to the manager. Hey, manager, this is a big deal here. Look at this. Guess what? That also created a problem. A lot of managers just got promoted to their job. They don't know what to do or say. And so people then freeze up. So they're like, I don't know what to do. By the way, being a manager ain't easy. It's not like everybody went to management school. Some of us just got promoted because the other guy got fired. Now I'm the manager. What am I supposed to do? So we made the AI a little bit smarter so that not only does it give the manager a nudge, it also gives them a sample text. You could say this, you could say that. So our AI is getting smarter and smarter about how to help real people in a real world environment. And again, it's not some app you got to go and get. It's in the flow of work. It'll pop up in Teams. It'll pop up, sometimes depending on who it is, we'll push it with emails. But I love this. I mean, I hope you can tell. I'm passionate about this because I want people to do well. Nobody applies for a job hoping they're going to screw it up.
Right.
Nobody hires anybody hoping they're going to fire them. It's always this moment of hope. And whenever it doesn't work out, it's a missed opportunity for that person, for that firm, for the community. So, that may be too much information, but I don't know. I'm feeling free. So
You really hit on something there. I mean, I want to highlight one comment I saw in the chat. I mean, Candace Bridges, she said, yes, yes, yes. The culture must be there for manager, people, teams, everyone that you're focused on, and invested in caring for themselves and others. That stuff matters. And so you're hitting on it. Candace gets it. Those in the chat get it. And so obviously you've really honed in on something that is really resonating with others. And it makes me curious because I was interested in this conversation also because Rapport also has a part of it that's really focused on civility, encouraging civility in the workplace. Tell us a little bit more, pull that thread a bit on where does civility come into play? How is that encouraged and why is it important?
Well, big picture, civility is key to civilization. So if things get too uncivil, you don't even have a civilization. So it's very, very important. Um, you know, uh, One of the things that I think people really were expected in this past, call it 10 years, to do something that's probably unfair and maybe even impossible. This idea that you're supposed to have you'd be civil to everybody, have this great deal of empathy for all these people who you maybe never met, who are very different from you. When you had kind of racial reckoning, the Me Too reckoning, all these things really increased what people's standards and expectations were for how they were going to be interacted with. But the reality is, look, I'm 56 years old. You take an average 56-year-old straight dude, I wasn't taught to have empathy for myself, let alone for other people. That's a different thing. And what we learned through working with Columbia and doing the research is the key, if you want to get, like, I'm 56 years old, I'm supposed to manage somebody who's 23-year-old lesbian on the other side of the country via Zoom and Slack. Before you ask me to have empathy for that person, I need to have a little empathy for myself. The great thing about the report check-in is asking you, how are you doing?
Yeah.
It's a mental thing. How am I doing? What is my energy level? What is my work level? What is going on in my life? And automatically it puts people in a mindset to then be receptive to how the other person is doing. This is a key insight that we developed, that if you want civility, you need empathy, and empathy starts with the self. Get some insight into you. Disclose how you are. And that will automatically create a very different conversation for the other person. So, but I'm passionate about it because when there's that psychological safety, when people know that their manager has enough context for them that, they're having a bad day, their kid has diarrhea, whatever's going on, that you got that psychological safety, that's when the magic starts happening. That's when innovation starts happening. That's when problems start getting solved, et cetera. But how do you engineer that in this environment? That it's a trick. It's a trick. How are you doing is the first step toward how's everybody else doing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's encouraging that authenticity and transparency, which is required in creating psychological safety.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into the AI of it all, because that is very connected to all of this. So much of the conversation we know around AI really centers on the disruption, the automation, efficiency. We can't stop talking about productivity. And then, of course, the possible job displacement that could come of it. So some organizations now are even being, they're leaning into this term of, we're AI first. We're an AI first company. But I want to hear from you. Does AI first necessarily mean human last? Or can AI help us become more human at work, not less?
Look, I think people are gonna figure out really quickly that all this stuff sounds great. Oh, I don't have to hire people. I don't have to deal with people. I can just have a bunch of AI agents do everything and just give me my $1 billion valuation. Yeah, if it sounds too good to be true, it's probably a lie. So no, that's not going to be how it works. You're going to need people. Now you're going to need people who know how to use AI, who know how to deploy AI agents. You're going to have, so people have maybe some different skill sets, but at the end of the day, um, you're going to need people who can work with each other.
Hmm.
Firms may get smaller, more efficient. We'll see. There's not much evidence of that yet. People are hiring differently, but you've got some of the technology companies are laying off a bunch of programmers. We'll see how that works out for them. But most companies are not technology companies. Most companies are companies that do something else. And so, like, I would say a couple things about it. Number one, be very careful about taking the whole company into and dunking them in this AI soup. You may want to take a part of the company, uh, do a special project and see and try. The same way with us, you will run into roadblocks you didn't expect. There will be unintended consequences and outcomes. And so if anybody goes to a conference and comes back super happy and starts wanting to fire everybody, tell them to get a therapist. You know what I mean? Go to the spa, like chill out. It's not going to be that easy. It's not going to be that smooth. Number two, good people, especially good people who want to be upskilled, are invaluable. Uh, there are always going to be aspects of business that are human. I don't care how quickly you turn that email around. I don't care how fast you can prototype. At a certain point, somebody who really gives a damn, somebody who knows the business well, somebody who's got good people skills, and somebody who's being supported to show up as a human being will still win the contract. You look at how irrational your contracting is right now. You got all kind of people you work with because you like them, even though maybe technically you could, take go to some foreign firm and get it cheaper. So people are not going to stop being people, and therefore we need to make our people better and stronger.
Yeah. I mean, I know you and I were talking a little bit before the call. You've had some very big conversations lately in Washington just about the future of the
Mhm.
technology. And so
Yeah.
tell me a little bit, what's keeping you optimistic? Because it can be really easy to get caught up, especially when speaking with employees, about the fear as it relates to the advancing of AI in the workplace.
Look, there's reason to be nervous. There's reason to be nervous because change is hard. Um, even good change is hard. Even change you want is hard. I have 4 kids. My older boy graduated from high school a couple years ago. Oh, the worst day of my life. Like, you think about it. These little kids come in pooping and stuff. You try to get them potty trained and stand up on their hind legs and doing their homework and tying their shoes and why? Because you're trying to get them out of your house. You want to get them independent and grown and out of your house. And then they hand them the diploma and you just break down crying. Like, this is terrible. Now, this is change that I wanted, but it's heartbreaking. Where this little dude, I don't want him to leave, really. I wish he could get some income, but it's just, I don't want to be unemployed and ungrateful. But you think about that, even change you want is just devastating. So uh, I think people are going to have to get a little bit more, for lack of a better term, a little bit more spiritually grounded. Emotional health is going to be important. People are going to have to, a little bit of Buddhism can help in terms of non-attachment. right? There's a lot of inner work is going to be required, which is not going to show up in your job description. But it's going to be important. So yeah, there are reasons to be nervous. But the key is I'm trying to solve problems. I'm trying to create value. And now there's a new set of tools. Can I use these tools to create more value? Can I use these tools to solve more problems more quickly? I may have to make an investment in myself again, a reinvestment in myself. But guess what? You did that before. As smart as you are right now, you weren't that smart 5 years ago or 10 years ago. You've been making investments in yourself before. It's just a different type of investment. So yes, you're going to have to, AI will not take your job. Somebody who knows how to use AI will take your job. But if you know how to use AI, you might be able to create some jobs. See, so it's just about honoring the human, honoring here's the other thing too, especially when you get to be a certain age like me. Learning stuff is hard. Unlearning stuff is really hard. It's unlearning all the ways I usually do things that now can be done a different way. And so we got to give each other some patience and some love and some grace as we not only learn new things, but unlearn old things. All this stuff is going to be stressful. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you're a manager or if you're doing HR stuff, tell people to pump the brakes. People are going to get real greedy, try to throw away a lot of good people, think they're going to have all these AI, agents to do everything. And some people will be successful. And a lot of people are going to regret it. So as fast, Jeff Bezos is somebody who's mentor, what you want to call it, of mine. Bezos says, slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So as you begin to bring in these new technologies, including Rapport.co, and by the way, if you liking this Rapport.co stuff, Tajio may have put it in the chat, but anybody here can get it 3 months for free at Rapport.co. Tajio, stick in there how they do that. I'm not good at the technology part of it, but there's a special code you can get, and you can check it out for yourself and see if it's good. If it's good, great. If you think it sucks, tell us and we'll fix it. But so a lot of people are going to get excited about the AI stuff. They're going to want to go a little bit too fast. Some people are in denial. They're just going to get wiped out. It's like, I'm not worried about people in denial. They won't be around. But some people are going to be too eager. And you want to.
We've seen that in our survey data. There's still some companies that are very much ignoring, in denial. Some industries have prohibited internal use of AI, and that's understandable in the short term. But they're also going to need to find a way to unprohibit it and start using it where it makes sense. I just wanted to jump in here real quick. That there's been a lot of good stuff going on in the chat. People, doubling down and saying mind blown at one point from some of your analogies and other great points. A lot of people, though, noting and agreeing with you on, you said some of the tech firms are going to, let people go, replaced by AI programmers. And I liked your phrasing. We'll see how that goes for them, I think you said, because some of them are going to bring them back. In fact, we just saw one company, Klarna, made the news recently because they let go a lot of their customer service reps, but then the quality of the AI wasn't good. And they're now, hiring a lot of them back or hiring new folks. So that's definitely happening. And there were several people in the chat that mentioned this around managers. What if the AI is seen by the other employees as doing the work of the manager? Will they let managers go? And so I'm just glad you looped back around to that, Van, and said, no. It's going to be the managers that use the AI that will be, the stronger ones. And we really need to give them training on that.
Yeah, look, right now everybody's getting set up to fail. These poor managers are being asked to do impossible stuff with bad tools. We're going to do an annual survey, and then based on that, you're supposed to figure out what to do next week, the next week, the next week, the next week, with no help, no feedback, and that's not going to work. But it's about again, the point of a firm is to create value, solve problems, and get paid for it. And if you stay focused on that, what problem we're trying to solve, what value we're trying to create, how can we use AI to help our people create more value and solve more problems? If you have that as your mindset, then it becomes an empowering conversation. How can we use AI to cut as many costs as possible? The point of a firm is not to cut cost. The point of a firm is to solve problems and create value. So don't get greedy and stupid because you're going to wind up throwing away the main thing you need, which is good people who are hard to find.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is the place to really get sharp about that workforce planning. I mean, Tom mentioned our recent workforce readiness study. I mean, a huge key finding of that is the people who are probably the most familiar and using Gen AI the most are often the most afraid that it's going to replace their job. And that's because they know the power of it. But if senior leadership is coming in really talking about, okay, how are we going to retool some of these roles? I think just like you're saying, that's focusing on the value and really making them feel a bit more confident in their jobs and their future at the company. So absolutely. Another question that we're just thinking a lot about is just reducing friction. There is a potential for AI to reduce friction for just the everyday employees' work. So I want to know from you, where do you see AI really simplifying those everyday employee challenges and workflows?
Well, I mean, really just depend. I mean, it depends on the firm and it depends on the position. I mean, knowledge workers like myself, I mean, it's crazy how smart I can get super fast. I mean, part of the thing is going to be hard for people to get their brains wrapped around. I'm always using analogies and metaphors and stuff like that because it helps me think. What used to be hard to get? Water. Water used to be very hard to get. You had to find a well. You had to dig it. You had to transport it back. And I'm talking about 200 years ago. And in some places right now around the world, women spend half the day just going to get water and bring it back to a village. But then there's a technological breakthrough called plumbing, and now you can get water just by doing this. Just by doing this. Well, intelligence used to be hard to get. You had to go to a temple or a library or a university and get educated and sit in industrial rows and have somebody talk at you and write stuff down and try to keep it in your wetware head and then write on it. Now, intelligence you can get just like this. Like with ChatGPT, like you can get very, very smart answers for free. And so that's no longer going to be the differentiator. People are going to get, you'll have free flowing intelligence. So it used to be, now watch who gets an advantage now. It used to be whoever can speak the best, whoever can give the best, loudest answer, they were going to win. Well, now who can ask the best question? Who can give the best prompt to the AI, right? Who can spot the pattern? Who can listen? Who can prompt and listen? That may well be a different kind of leader. Maybe, just guessing, women might listen a little bit better given their social training. Women might be a little bit more skilled at asking the smart question rather than always giving the smart answer because of their social training. You might see different kinds of intelligence paired with AI and watch different types of people rise. Also, since IQ is going to be freely available, everybody's going to have like a jetpack for their brain. EQ, understanding people, is going to become much, much more valuable. Everybody's going to come in the room with a bunch of smarty pants stuff to say, but who can get along with anybody? So, and the other thing I want to say, this is way off topic, but I don't care. You might be surprised. Things that may have been a disadvantage in the old order may be an advantage in this order. And things that may have been an advantage in the old order may be a disadvantage. What am I talking about? There's going to be a lot of disruption. There's going to be a lot of change, a lot of things that are unexpected. Well, if you grew up in a neighborhood or in a family where there's a lot of disorder, a lot of disruption, a lot of chaos, you might be pre-adapted for the hustle of all that and the improvisation of all that. If you come from a culture that's had to put up with a lot of change, you might actually be pre-adapted to deal with the changes that are coming. However, if you're from a world where, everything's very orderly, very predictable, and you got your degree and you turn in your papers on time and you were able to climb a certain ladder and everything was kind of, as long as it was laid out ahead of you, you could do very well. In a disordered world of disruption, you may not do as well psychologically, emotionally, or professionally. So let's not assume that we know what kinds of intelligence, what kinds of backgrounds, what types of innate capabilities are going to be correlated with success. We might be entering a world, always like, I'm scared of AI. This might be the best thing ever happened to you. All the stuff that made your life hard may have been preparing you for this. See, this is a very different digital divide than we've had before. When I was coming up in the 80s and 90s, the digital divide was a hardware divide. Remember they had that thing, a laptop for every child, and we were raising money and crying and stuff, trying to get a laptop to everybody. Everybody's got one of these phones now. It's not a hardware problem. The hardware problem's been solved. It's not a software problem. You can download most of these AI apps for free. And there's a paid tier. You can get most of the stuff literally for free. And if you don't know anything about it, you can go on YouTube for free, Instagram for free. Just type in artificial intelligence, follow all the accounts. You'll be a genius in 2 weeks. It's not a hardware problem. It's not a software problem. It's a wetware problem. Your brain does not believe this is for you. AI does not believe you can use AI for good, and you're afraid of it. And so therefore you're not using it. But I'm going to tell you, there's the people who are the most scared may actually wind up being the people who get the most benefit, because it's going to be a leveling of intelligence and other capabilities, your improvisational ability, your empathetic ability, your ability to question and listen is suddenly going to be elevated in a way it hadn't been before, possibly.
That's really interesting. I mean, one of the questions that we were going to ask you, I mean, you're already getting there, which is perfect, was there's this curiosity around, what does it take to truly build tech that puts people first? But to take that a step further, who often gets left out in these conversations and these advancements? And I know you've done a lot of prior work on inclusion in the tech sector. So can you tap a little bit more on that and who else will be brought into the conversation that often gets left out?
Well, look, you played the song from Prince, which I greatly appreciated. He was also a good friend and a good mentor. I ran Prince's philanthropy for the last 6 years of his life. And, you know, Prince was the money behind an initiative called Yes, We Code. And that was a very exciting, moment when we were trying to get people from underestimated backgrounds, overlooked communities, into coding, back when coding was like a big deal. So Prince was the main money behind Yes, We Code. And, you know, what I truly believe is that there are some parts of the tech sector that have unfortunately just proven that they're just not as interested in or open to uh, opening themselves up to more people at the top. And I wish that weren't the case. But in their race against each other, these AI companies racing each other, they're just leaving a trail of capability that is available to communities that these things were not designed for, but people can get a hold of them. Listen, this is not like 1950s Jim Crow. You got the Ku Klux Klan trying to prevent people from getting any information. It's all out there. The question is, are we using these devices as toys or as tools? People are on their phones all the time, but they're wasting their time as consumers of somebody else's content, as opposed to people who are using this to really make themselves creators of their own content or creators of their own destiny. And so I spend less time worrying about the downside of AI. I feel like a lot of people are doing that. And I think it's important. I think that they're right. It could get crazy. It could wipe out every job. It could create bioweapons to kill everybody. But you know what? Van Jones has very little ability to do anything about that. That is above my pay grade. I hope some senator or somebody is working on that. Dr. King talked about equal protection from bad stuff. That's important. I hope somebody's going to protect us from the bad stuff. But there's also equal access to the good stuff, equal opportunity to the good stuff. There is good stuff coming from AI. And I believe what you appreciate appreciates. I believe what you focus on grows. And I believe when you Put your attention on the positive in your own life. I mean, I could sit up here and give you a whole pity party. I'd have everybody up here crying and trying to send me a cookie if I told you every bad thing happening in my life right now. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what I'm passionate about, what I'm excited about, what I'm hopeful about, and I feel better. And hopefully you feel better. And as a matter of fact, then I'll have a better day. Oh, thank you for the cookie anyway, Stephen. But I'll have a better day, and then by having a better day, I think what's true for me is true for the universe. That when we put our attention toward positive things, when we look for the good, we add to the good, and the good grows. And so I cannot do anything about all these nightmare scenarios, Terminator, and that type of stuff. If I could do something about it, I would. But I can make sure that the people who I talk to every day feel a little bit better about themselves. And the tool I'm working on is truly empowering people to be better to each other. And that's all we can do. There's going to be too much stuff changing for us to worry about everything. Let's focus on the good that we can do.
Absolutely. And in focusing on that good that we can do, and maybe just more so on an organizational level, I mean, we can't have this conversation without talking about trust and the trust issue. I mean, more and more people are feeling less comfortable to bring their full selves to work.
Yes.
They possibly don't trust their employers in the same way that they did before. And so an organization like Rapport, I think there could be a devil's advocate here who says, this is great. They can put an emoji and say how I feel, but how do we know that they're being honest? And what is senior leadership's role in encouraging that trust and that honesty? How do we do it? That's a challenge.
Look, that's a real thing. That's a real thing. And I don't have any cheap, easy answers on that. What I can't say is what we've been seeing. I can just tell you what we're seeing so far. The younger the employee, the more they want to share how they're doing. And some people have been having a difficult time with these younger employees because they want to tweet and all this type of crazy stuff. But part of it is we're not giving them, they do expect to be met in a different way. And we're not giving them constructive outlets on a day-by-day basis so that they hold it and they blow up and quit and act crazy. So what we found is that younger employees are actually much more willing to share. And then what we've learned is that because you always have a bell curve. Some people never want to share. Some people always want to share. What we've discovered is when the people who do want to share, if they see the manager responding constructively, more people then want to share, right? Now, if you have a manager that doesn't respond constructively, doesn't respond at all, well, then guess what? You have a shitty manager and you're going to have problems anyway. And, that's just, but if you have a half decent manager that really wants to do a good job and with our tool can actually help to do a good job, when people see, wow, like, maybe I should be a little bit more honest on my little emojis. Maybe I should say a little bit more about how I'm doing. You can grow that trust in a team. And then what we've seen happen is you always have a few that are willing to try. You grow the trust on the team, and then the performance of the team starts to go up. And then other people start looking at that team, and you can create a positive wave of of goodness, but trust has to be earned. And the thing about trust, and look, there's some stuff technology can't help you. Trust is the hardest thing to earn and the easiest thing to lose. That's just true. You might have a best friend for 20 years, and they could do something that you can't forgive them for, and never speak to them again in life. This is not a magic wand. It's a tool in the toolbox that can give people a little bit better shot at having high performance teams. What I'm focused on is high performance teams, high performance collaboration across lines of difference. That's what Van Jones is passionate about. High performance collaboration across lines of difference, because I still believe no matter what people say is popular now, we need each other. We need each other. The more different you are from me, the more I need your perspective so that I can be smarter and we can solve tough problems.
Absolutely. High performance team. That's music to our ears here at I4CP. Tom, I was wondering what comments, reactions, and questions are you seeing? Anything before I get to my
couple of things. Thanks, Amber and Van. This has been wonderful. People are really leaning into a lot of the analogies and other turns of phrases you're using. I wanted to call out one from our colleague Amber and I Molly Lombardi is another senior research analyst, and on one of your recent points, Van, she said, if an employee gives feedback and no one responds, did it really happen? Sort of like the tree falling in the forest didn't make a sound. I love that turn of phrase. Couple of things, if I could go back, there were some questions concerned. You hit on these a little bit, but people earlier on when you were talking about the pulse surveying with Rapport, have you run into any companies or individuals raising sort of privacy issues, or maybe even leaning in DEI concerns around people sharing their information in this way? How do you handle that? Privacy, I guess, being the main one.
We have to deal with some of that stuff on a firm by firm basis, and we also have there's also a whole bunch of just security stuff. I mean, this stuff is
Security, sure.
great security. I mean, once we design the tool, most of what we have to do is like deal with all the security stuff. Different firms deal with privacy differently. On the DEI side, in some ways, I was kind of hinting at this earlier. Some of our expectations were so high for people. They were going to be able to like take one workshop and suddenly like overcome 400 years of training in like racial bias and gender bias and trans bias and all sorts of stuff. It's just not fair. You're asking somebody who's been sitting on a couch to run a marathon in a day. And so what we got really deep with the Columbia Difficult Conversations Lab. A lot of the stuff I'm saying is data and research based. And we wanted to get it down to what is the core of the core of the core of the information people need to treat each other well. Energy level, workload, and any blockers. That's it. Now, if you can get that information across, and if you start with my empathy for myself, which makes me more empathetic for other people, you do about 90% of a lot of the DEI work, and you never said DEI and never even were focused on DEI because what DEI is trying to get you to is high performance collaboration across lines of difference. And so, that's there are other ways to get to the same outcome with a little bit less friction, a little bit less rug burn. But look, we're figuring this stuff out, and look, we are learning every day, every week, and every firm is different. But this is exciting to be able to talk about it. Like I said, Joe put in there.
One last thing I want to surface from the chat. Our co-founder, Kevin Oakes, has been participating in the chat, and he raised something that sort of a paradox or maybe a contradiction in terms of manager expectations. It used to be that HR would explicitly tell managers, don't worry about being empathetic. When people come to you with issues or raise things, send them to HR. Because for legal liability reasons, we don't want untrained managers having to deal with things like this. But now the expectations have very much changed. It was already changing before COVID. I think it got accelerated during COVID, the focus on well-being and just many other shifts. And so he raised the question in the chat, is anyone, and some folks did respond, how are you training managers? How are you upskilling them to be more empathetic, to have that higher EQ that you mentioned, Van? What have you seen in this regard? How do you, because this will only work best when managers respond well and lean in appropriately. And if some of them are more natural at doing that than others.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you something, man. There's nothing more powerful than a dashboard. Nothing more powerful than a dashboard. If you're a manager, look, if you're a shitty manager, then our tool can't fix that. But if you're an amazing manager, then you're amazing. But most people are in the middle. I'm in the middle in my profession. I'm not somebody screaming in the parking lot, but I'm also not Anderson Cooper. I'm in the middle. I need help. And so a dashboard that shows you literally the lines, the workload of my team, the energy level of my team, and then also you get a weekly report where if you're not good at spotting patterns, our AI is brilliant at spotting patterns. And listen, and some stuff will pop up that people hadn't paid attention to. It's like last week 4 different people reported that they hadn't got a good night's sleep. Well, hold on a second. Or 3 people reported things that suggest they might need mental health support. Well, the AI can then suggest you might want to remind your employees that we have these benefits and those benefits. And so there's nothing like a dashboard where you can see what's going on. There's nothing like real-time coaching from an AI to help you do better. And it's this stuff is not easy to do. It's not easy. It's not easy to be a manager. There's no magic tool. Your health is still not as great as you want it to be, even though you got an Oura Ring and a smartphone and a Fitbit and everything else. But it's better than it would have been. It's better than it would have been, and that's what we hope our tool can do for you.
Absolutely. And I think the best question to end on today, and we could keep asking you questions all day, but we do have to let you go. But I think the best question to end on is, we really want to take advantage of you being here. So selfishly, as you are looking into this space, as you are looking into HR from sort of the outside in some ways, you have a very unique vantage point in terms of what you are hearing every single day. So what is it that you believe is happening or is on the horizon of happening in the workplace that we should all be paying attention to, those of us who work in and around HR? What do you see on the horizon looking forward?
I think people are going to have a lot of mental health. People are going to need a lot of mental health support, and to the extent that you have those benefits and people are not using them, I think you need to be expecting to deploy those resources. You should be looking for how to get those resources to people, because change is hard, and a lot of change is coming. Economically, geopolitically, politically, ecologically, technologically, people need help and support. I think that's important. I think that people need to start setting aside time to help people upskill on AI. It's an investment you can make in your people that will help your firm. And even if you wind up contracting a little bit for whatever reason, the people that you're upskilling, they'll do better in the world going forward. If you don't do that, you're going to wind up advantaging people who are taking work time and doing this stuff anyway. And the people who are trying to keep up with the job assignments are going to fall behind. And you're going to wind up with just spontaneously some group of people outperforming everybody using AI, and that they're suddenly going to be your workforce. That may not be what you want. It may be better to give everybody a shot on goal with this stuff, so that you wind up with a different mix for your future workforce. But look, I love this conversation. This is way better than talking about politics in DC. I would love to come back sometime if you'll have me. It's going to be this will be for all the professionals on this call. This is what you trained for. This is why you went to school. This is why you took this job. This is why you're in the seat that you're in. It will be challenging, and it will be rewarding for those of us who lean in. So just lean into it, man.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Van, on behalf of everyone here. We appreciate you, and maybe we'll get you at our conference next spring. Thanks again.
I'll come. I'll get my cookies there.
Yeah, I'll double down on that. Thank you, Van. We've had a lot of good guests, a lot of good speakers on this series since we started it in early 2020. And I got to say, this is one of the best. Many of people are saying this in the chat. Some are saying it is the single best that we've had on Next Practices Weekly. So well done. I want to remind everyone, as always, that if you've got a certification with either HRCI or SHRM, just jot down the relevant program ID or activity ID for your research credit hour. With that, I'm going to close us out. Thank you again, Van. Great insights shared. Thank you, Amber, for facilitating and drawing all of that out. Everyone, have a great rest of your day and rest of your week and weekend coming up, and we'll see you again real soon. Thanks now.
Thanks.
Bye.